Hello friends, it's Chari. Today I am creating this really fun and cute gingerbread themed card with some white embossing on craft cardstock. So for my card today, I'm starting out with the Joy to All stamp set. I think that this big tree looks like it would be the perfect gingerbread cookie. So that is the idea behind the images today. So I'm going to be white embossing this tree onto a piece of paper bag cardstock. So I've stamped it in that clear embossing ink. I'm adding my white embossing powder, and I'll just heat that up and melt it till that's all nice, bright, and white. It looks just like icing on a gingerbread cookie. So I'm going to do the same thing for all of the decorations. So that's why I went ahead and embossed it so I could start stamping decorations. So first I have the little garlands. I'll stamp those and go ahead and emboss those with my white embossing powder. And the fun thing about this idea is I'm only going to have to die cut one thing, which is the tree, because everything else is included in the tree. And this is also a perfect opportunity to use these really tiny stamps that are in the stamp set, some little snowflakes and stars, and add those as the ornaments because I want them to not be too big. I don't want to use those big ornaments. I want to see a lot of that gingerbread cookie. So I've stamped those little pieces, those little elements, and I'm going to white emboss those as well, and then my tree will be all finished. But I thought it would be fun. I need some people around the tree, and instead of using the little girl and the little boy, I thought it would be fun to have some gingerbread men. So I'm using the O Snap set. I'm actually not going to use that guy that's all angry there with his foot missing. I actually just stamped two of the other one. And then I also used the little gingerbread man that matches him. That's from the Tiny Gingerbread stamp set. So I'm going to make a little gingerbread family to go around my Christmas tree. So I've stamped that little guy. I'm going to emboss him, and then all my images will be ready to die cut. I've got all my cookies die cut here. You can see how great those look with that white embossing on that paper bag cardstock. I am going to darken up the edges a little bit, make them look baked, but first I'm going to work on my background with the Stitch Snowflake Backdrop. I've cut this from some Ballet Slipper cardstock, and then I'm going to cut it again using the largest outside-in stitched rectangle. So this is going to give me a panel that's slightly smaller than A2 and give me that nice stitching detail around the edges, and so I'll get a little border around it when I put it on my card base. I also want to add some ink blending to it. I think that this really makes the stitching of the snowflakes stand out because those stitching lines catch the ink when you do this technique. And I'm just adding some worn lipstick distress ink around all the edges and corners. We're going to have that lighter ballet slipper pink in the center and then a little bit darker on the edges, and I just think this looks really nice. It kind of gives a focal point to the images you're going to put in the center as well. So once I have this looking the way I want it, I'm going to actually add some inking to my cookies. So I'm using tea dye distress ink. It's similar in color to the paper bag, and I'm just doing a little bit of blending with a very small brush just around the edges. I think this gives them a nice definition. It also makes them not look so flat, and it makes them look like you've baked them in the oven, and those edges are a little bit more crispy. And then I'm just going to wipe off the ink that's on that embossing. That embossing is going to resist it. You're going to keep that nice bright look, and you can kind of see the difference of that darker edge versus the gingerbread man I had not yet inked. I'm going to do the same thing to my two little gingerbread men and my little baby gingerbread man. And I just think that this just adds even more interest to these colored cardstock die cuts. So you can see the difference between the two there, the two gingerbread men, the inked one versus the uninked. So you can see that it does add something to everything. Now for my sentiment, I'm using the Scripty Sweet die cut. I've cut this from some mermaid cardstock. I'm just going to add some inking to the bottom with some peacock feathers ink. This will give it kind of an ombre look with that lighter color on top and darker color on the bottom. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my background onto my card base. So I've got a white card base, and since I cut this with that outside in stitch rectangle, I'm going to get that nice white border all the way around it. For the sentiment, I'm using some stamps from the Offset Sayings Christmas set. I'm using May Your Holidays Be, and that will be the first part of my sentiment. And I'm just going to stamp that in black ink on a little banner, and that will go above the word sweet. So it'll say, May your holidays be sweet, which I just think works perfectly with these little cookie images. So I'm just figuring out about where I want it. None of these pieces are glued down yet. I'm going to start with that banner. So I'm gluing that with some liquid glue, and then I thought I should kind of make the sweet die cut a little thicker, a little heftier, so it kind of stands out. So I've cut 3 other Scripty sweets from that same mermaid cardstock, and I'm just going to stack them so that I get that really thick, almost like a chipboard die cut. So I'm just using liquid glue, and I'm stacking them right on top of each other, and then the one that I inked will be the one that goes on top. So once I get all these stacked together and I have that nice thick sentiment, I thought it would be fun to add some sugar along the bottom of this word sweet. So I've just used my glue tube. I've squirt some of that into a little puddle on my scrap piece of paper, and I'm using my finger to pick that up and add a little bit of glue along the bottom of my die cut. So this is on top of that darker color that I added with the ink. Then I'm going to take this and I'm going to get out my chunky glitter, and I'm going to dump that onto that glue so we get this kind of sugary look along the bottom of the die cut. So I'm just using a coffee filter to catch that so that I can pour this on there. And then I'll just tap it with my tweezers and make sure that any of the extra glitter falls off. And look at that really fun, sugary, glittery sentiment. So now that my sentiment is all ready with the glitter, I'm going to add that along the bottom. And I like the look of that S and the T kind of overlapping the banner. It kind of frames that first part of the sentiment up really nicely. It makes it look like it's all one cohesive sentiment. And then I can add my cookies. So I've put some foam squares on the back of the tree, and I'll just center that up above my sentiment. And then I'm using some thicker foam squares for my gingerbread men. So I'm going to add my little guy in front, and then I'll add one of each of these on each side. And I just think this little family of gingerbread men looks so cute around this gingerbread tree. And then, of course, I need to add some glitter to my images to match my glittery sentiment. So I'm just using some Stardust stickles to add glitter to the garlands on the tree, to their buttons, and just one dot of glitter on each of the ornaments so that they shimmer and shine as well. And then the last thing that I forgot to do was take my pink colored pencil, and I just added some very light rosy cheeks to my gingerbread family. And then here is my finished card. I think this idea of making the gingerbread cookies with the white embossing turned out super cute, and it's a different fun way to use your stamps. So here is another look at that really fun card. I am very pleased with how it turned out. It is just adorable. Thanks so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.